Welcome to ELF Cycles. This is called Meet a Tree. We're on Center 1. At the beginning, we'll just tell you if you've got any questions or need some information, or if we're running low on supplies, please let us know at mitchellelf@gmail.com. We're going to go ahead and dig into this bin that's for Center 1. As you can see from the outline that's available at the PTA website, mitchellpta.org, if you go under Programs and Events, you'll find ELF, and if you go into ELF, you'll find Cycles Meet a Tree. There you'll see the outline. Anyways, here we are at Center 1. The objective of Center 1 is to observe the major parts of a tree and learn the role of each part of the tree during a tree's life cycle. As with most of the ELF units and centers, we strongly suggest that you take a look at the paper materials for the 15-minute setup so that you become familiar with them. And you can cater your information and your materials down to whatever grade level of child you have. We also highly recommend that you start with the paper things before you move into the more exciting hands-on stuff that we have within each center. There are several books for this one. They're here about trees, and maybe you want more detail about what the twigs are as compared to the branches, or in detail depth of what the trunk has, because it has the heartwood, the sapwood, and the cambium, and the xylem and phloem. That's basically the circulatory system of the tree. Anyways, you've got these books here to use. Any one of them could be used for Center 1 or for the introduction and conclusion. Basically, what this center is going to go into are the parts of a tree. And here we have a laminated outline with the parts right there on it. It's labeled. It's kind of hard to distinguish in a plain old black and white copy. That's why we bring in materials for the kids to do. In this envelope, we have that same diagram I just showed you. And then we have a blank, and we'll have that labeled key, which is the one we just showed you. Excuse the shaky videoing. Anyway, here's a blank one. For the bigger kids, at the end of your ELF session of Center 1, you could certainly have them fill it out. We have dry erase markers in this envelope as well. If you'd like to make copies of what I just showed you, you can go down to the para workroom and use the copier. The PTA copier code is 19540. This way you can send those home with the kids and advertise a little bit for ELF. Anyways, basically what you're going to do in this center is talk about all the parts of a tree as listed in your outline. We're going to talk about the roots, the trunk, bark, branches, the twigs, leaves, and flowers. There's a lot of really other good information in here too. We've got these laminated sheets. This one talks about bark. This one talks about roots and has a very nice picture of a root ball. This one talks about the tree rings and how a tree grows. Because a tree grows in two different ways. Then we talk about the process of photosynthesis. The tree trunk, and lastly this big huge diagram that we have covered already a couple times in this conversation. We also have a growth cycle from bud to leaf, and again, since we're talking about cycles this year, that'd be a great thing to cover. All the kids know that the deciduous trees are going dormant, although they might not know those words, so you could certainly talk about deciduous trees being the trees that lose their leaves, and going dormant for the winter, how they've stocked up all summer with photosynthesis in the leaves, and now their leaves are falling. We also have this. It's called the birth of a tree, again, to drive home the cycle of a tree. And this is kind of for younger kids. This is a Ranger Rick article, and it talks about losing leaves in the fall and how trees use their thermostat to keep cool or break a sweat in the summer. Okay, so we've kind of covered some of the materials. I'm going to go ahead and open up the bin and show you the rest of the things we have in here before we move to our other thing. Important to note on the outline, it says volunteer bring-ins. It's kind of fuzzy, but it says to bring in fresh leaves, twigs, and flowers. That's just will help with the other materials I have in a bin over here that we'll talk about next. Anyways, here's a couple more envelopes. Please make sure and put everything back in the envelopes as you found them, as with any ELF center and any ELF unit. We also have magnifying glasses in here. Kids love to feel like they're little scientists. Okay, last thing we have is this other big pink bin. We kind of recommend that this center be done out in the hallway so you can spread out and show kids things. This one is a good example cross-section of bark. And it also shows a trunk. You can talk about the animal and the insect boring in there and talk about what might do that and what harm it will do. Because once they learn about the layers and where the circulatory system is of the trees with the xylem and the phloem, they can see that the damage from insects goes straight to the bark and straight to the factory of the tree. We also have a branch and a twig, and I know you're probably wondering what the difference is. Well, this is a branch. It has twigs that come off of it. Twigs have leaves come off of it, or buds. So this is technically a branch. Sorry about the video quality here. Here's a smaller twig. So you can kind of put together a tree from the base because here we have some roots. Oh, they're dirty and muddy. We will have some kind of sheet or tarp in this center as well for you to lay it on the floor. Anyways, you could talk about all the roots and their function. And again, it's in detail in those laminated sheets for you to give them some descriptions. And here's another piece of bark. This piece is a little bit easier to show the inside of the bark, again with the animal borings and dwellings. You could talk about how rough this bark is, and maybe as a volunteer you have a smoother barked tree in your yard that you could, or in your firewood pile, that you could bring in a sample of a smooth barked tree. So the point again of this center, Center 1, is to observe the major parts of a tree and to learn the role of each of those parts in the tree's cycle. So you really want to cover kind of the major anatomy of a tree, I guess the major botany. You got the roots, the trunk, the bark, the branches, the twigs, and the leaves. And if you're kind enough to bring in flowers, you can talk about that. It's also great to bring in leaves because the kids can appreciate the variety of Mother Nature. All right, if you have any questions about Center 1, please contact us at mitchellelf@gmail.com. And thanks for helping.